In this video, I'm going to work on finishing off this tunnel. I got to fill that big hole there, and I got to get this piece welded in. I've already put some screws, sheet metal screws in here, self-tappers, to kind of hold those two pieces of metal together while I weld them. I'll show you what that looks like from underneath. If you watched the last video, you saw that I had to cut a huge hole in the transmission tunnel because neither the transmission nor the transfer case would fit. So in this one, we're going to look at what it takes to finish this job and get this back to looking like stock. So the screws help to hold that seam real tight together. And then I can put a bead of weld. I'll just put tack welds all along here until I get a solid bead. And there's some spots where I'll have to hammer it a little bit, just little by little, tap this together so I can get those two pieces of metal as tight together as possible. So we turn a gap like that into no gap, put it nice and tight so we can weld it. Put spot welds all the way along here. I'm going to keep filling that in. Okay, so what I've done so far is gone through and welded as much of this seam as possible. Just try to fill it in as much as I can. It's not perfect. Overhead welding is like the hardest kind of welding. But once I grind this down, it'll be smooth, and I'll put a little bit of Duraglass filler over that. And this should smooth out and look pretty much like stock. So I'm also going to go up on the top side and put some tack welds up there too. Okay, these spot welds on the top side are all done and all ground down. This whole top side will just get covered with this sound deadening mat, so we won't see any of that. I'll put some primer on it first. Alright, this tunnel is all done and welded in all the way from the front to the back. It's all welded up. The welds are kind of ugly. I just need to make a little removable plate here that'll kind of bolt in because I need that to get at the transfer case bolts. But otherwise, this is all finished, so I'm going to epoxy primer all these welds on the inside, and then I'll get covered with this stuff. And then underneath, this is all done too. I got this filler on this part, so that's nice and smooth. I just got to put some filler on the rest of these welds. Get that all smoothed out. Cheap little Harbor Freight orbital sander, little 2-inch sander, is going to be helping me out today. It uses these tiny little Velcro discs, and it really helps to get into tight spaces. Here's what this looks like, all sanded smooth. So the filler over the top of all the welds is sanded smooth. So it looks kind of rough now, but once I start getting some coats of primer and bedliner on there, it's going to look a lot smoother. This is an epoxy primer that's real thick and kind of sticky. And I'm going to put it on with a roller because I want it to have kind of a rough texture under there. Now I just need to make a cover for this hole. I'm kind of wondering if one of my rib nuts will fit in these holes that are already there. Oh, look at that. That stainless one fits perfect. Okay, now I got a couple nice threaded holes. And I'm going to attempt something here that I've never tried before, and that's Raptor liner with a roller. Half of the reason is because I only want to mix up a half a jug. I don't want to use the whole thing because I just have to do the transmission tunnel and that's it. And the other part of the reason is because I've already got a bunch of stuff painted underneath there. I don't really want to have the mess of the spray go everywhere, so I've seen it can be done with a roller and you get a nice texture out of it. So I'm just going to mix up a half of one and give it a try. Well, I gotta say, I'm not very impressed with this. Seems like it's going on real light and not a very uniform texture. So I think I'm gonna spray it. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. That just gives it a nice uniform coverage, a uniform texture. Rolling it on just wasn't looking good. But yeah, like I said, I think a trained observer that knew what to look for could probably tell that this isn't stock, but most people wouldn't know. I think it looks pretty nice. I've got the lights all working here on the fresh. I don't know if anybody noticed in the last video, I've got the nice blue radiator support on here. All right, so this is all done. It's all covered in the sound deadening material. And I've got some of this kind of spongy, foamy weather strip around the hole. So when that plate goes on top, that should seal it up. And that hole is exactly right over the top of these transfer case bolts. So if for any reason I ever need to drop the transfer case, that hole is like right here. So I'll be able to pull up the carpet, take that panel off and get at all these bolts. Okay. So that'll get covered with carpet. And we're done. So this transmission tunnel project is finally finished. You know what? Let's look at that from underneath. So I'll make sure that makes a good tight seal. Oh yeah, that looks good. Yep, that looks real good. All right. Now I think we can call this one done. So the next project, I got to clean the bench off here, and I'm going to rebuild this NP208 transfer case. I got to put the 32 spline input shaft in there. So since I have to take it all apart, I might as well rebuild the whole thing. So that'll be coming up next. Thanks for watching.